Good morning. So for this reading from the gospel, I always smile when I know that this one's coming up because it starts out saying, beware of the scribes who walk around in long robes, right? I literally am a monk. I wear long robes every single day. And so I was like, okay, I got to work my way out of this one. But what does he say? He says, listen, I'm not saying that wearing certain things are a problem. Jesus doesn't care about what you wear. But he's saying, watch out for those men who the contents of their heart are not pure, but rather are self-conceited and arrogant. Which then you must think, oh, then Father Barnabas is relieved after that because he doesn't have any of that going on, right? Jesus is pointing out that the human condition that we fight with is, spiritual masters say, rooted in pride. And yet, what is it that we need to overcome pride? Well, as we were thinking about, I was thinking about the long robes and whatnot, even in the tradition of the church, even the Pope himself, right? He's the only one that wears all white, of anyone. And yet there's an old tradition that the Pope, he doesn't do it anymore, I don't think, but he would wear red shoes. He'd wear all white but red shoes. And I would ask my high school boys that I teach, well, why do you think he does this? And they would be like, is that just like the Pope drip? Is that just his Pope drippiness or whatever? It's like, no, it has meaning to it, not just to call attention to himself, but that as he's the light of the world for Christ, wearing white, he would wear red shoes because of the old adage that we stand in the blood of the martyrs. We stand in the blood of the martyrs. And the Pope, in his own humility, remembers that. Now, what am I trying to say to you? I think the message of the gospel today is that it's time to put some blood in the game when it comes to your Catholic faith. It's time to put some blood in the game. Now, of course, I could veer off into, well, that means because this Sunday we hear about the widow putting the money in, that I should preach about the time, talent, and treasure thing that we always talk about, right? But you know what prerequisite, something you have to do before you can honestly give your time, talent, and treasure the way you're supposed to? You have to give your heart. You have to give your heart to him, right? Otherwise, everything else is just a burden. And not to say that we shouldn't still just make decisions out of discipline anyway, but what does it mean to put blood in the game by giving him your heart? Some of you react to that comment that you should give Jesus your heart in different ways. I find maybe it's helpful to just discuss for a moment what is the condition of the human heart. Now, I think there's a lot of options as to what the condition of your own heart is. And the best way to discover that is to actually take the risk and talk to someone about the condition of your heart. And yet maybe I'll provide 3 examples that maybe you fit into at least one of them. That in order for us to give our heart to the Lord, maybe we should see what it's doing first. So number 1, maybe your heart is what I like to call full but not satisfied. Maybe your heart is full but not satisfied. Meaning what? Well, imagine that your heart had its own stomach, that it was hungry, very hungry, maybe even more hungry than your normal stomach, and that it seeks out things to fill it. And just like when we seek out certain foods that taste good but don't provide nutrition, we become full but not satisfied. And what does this mean? I think when the human heart settles for playing the games of prestige and honor, whenever it settles for the simple kind of pleasures of gossip or endless time on those little boxes that are in your pocket, right? Whenever our hearts settle for, you know what, maybe I can be treated this way because, well, it's not that bad. Guess what I'm saying is we all maybe have hearts that are full of things that the world says, hey, this is what will make you happy. And yet we're like, why am I still not satisfied? I think what the human heart needs as a remedy for this is to be able to finally rest. To be able to rest. St. Augustine famously said, "Our hearts are restless until they rest in you, Lord." And I find so often that everybody's hearts these days are just like little gerbils, so afraid, and just need to find a place to be able to find peace and to find rest. And maybe more than just a place, maybe to find a person that we can let our hearts not just be full and numb, but vulnerable and hungry, a place that it can rest. So maybe your heart is full but not satisfied. I'd encourage you to let it be hungry and go after the food that it actually needs. Number 2, maybe your heart is a heart that has walls up around it, like a fortress. Some of us are very good at doing this one, right? Now, why would there be walls up around your heart? Well, I have found as a priest that people put walls up around their heart, sometimes deliberately, sometimes one brick at a time, simply out of protection. Why? Because, well, I'll give a story real quick. Whenever I was in high school, I played football, and in the locker room, there was this, the kid on my team who he ended up going to play like D1. He was this big kid. And for some reason, he had boxing gloves in the in the locker room that day. And our lockers are right beside each other. Well, he puts the gloves on, and he's like, "Hey, let's spar a little bit." And I was like, "No, I'm trying to get out of here." So he gives me a jab right to the jaw. And I was like, "Whoa, hey, that wasn't okay, right?" He's like, "Come on." I was like, "No." Then he gives me another jab to the jaw, right? I got hit twice. Now, getting hit in the face is starts to really send you on. Well, he does it a third time. A third time, it's like I didn't even have an option. My body just reacted, and I swung at this 6'5", 300-pound tight end and hit him right in the face. And you know what I did after that? I'm sorry. The point is this, that we start to react and we start to live, especially if we get hit in the same place, the same wound again and again and again. I have found that it's normal to have something, not just get hit in the face, but some type of spiritual or emotional kind of wound. Nobody wants to have that thing. But why does it bother me so much? Well, maybe that's just a place that has been hit too many times or by someone that shouldn't have hit it. And we build walls around our heart. But the problem with walls around your heart is that while it doesn't let anyone in that could hurt you, it also keeps you trapped. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, "Father, I feel trapped." And I say, "Why don't you let Jesus come and free you?" Well, I don't even know where the door is to let him in. Well, Jesus has a lot of tools, including big sledgehammers that can break down the walls. Maybe your heart is one that needs to have walls broken down. The third condition of the heart. Maybe your heart it's not full but not satisfied. Maybe it doesn't have walls. But maybe if you have the image right now of a fishing reel. I'm a big fisherman. I like to think about fishing analogies, right? Maybe your heart is like a fishing reel that somehow the drag has been kind of too loose. What happens when the drag's too loose? But a lot of line just gets pulled downstream. And next thing you know, every fisherman has had the experience of wow, where did all this line go? How did all this line on my fishing reel end up so far downstream? The same thing can be true with our hearts. To say, well, how did my heart even how did I lose what I feel like I've lost in my life, in my relationships, in my own heart? That I feel like I'm not even worthy or I can't even get that back again. We feel lost and disoriented. I think these are some of the examples of evaluating honestly the condition of our heart. So what do we do with this, Father Barnabas? Great. This is a very depressing homily. Well, what does Jesus say today is the secret? I think he says that the secret to letting him come and do what he wants to do with our heart is by embracing poverty. Embracing poverty. I'm not talking about time, talent, and treasure. I'm talking about giving God your heart by embracing your poverty. Just like the woman in the first reading. That Elijah said, "Hey, can you give me something to eat?" And she's like, "Oh, no, I don't have enough." And he said, embrace your poverty and give from that place, and everything else will be given unto you. Right? I think it means this, that when we experience our own poverty, we can say, let me get this figured out first, Jesus. Right? Let me get my own fishing reel heart figured out first. I'll fix it. I'll do whatever I need to do. Or let me break down the walls myself, Jesus, and I'll make sure that those don't go up again. Oh, let me, make sure that my heart I'm not seeking after the things I shouldn't be anymore. You know how many times I've heard, man, I really need, I'm not worthy, Father. I'm not worthy. I need to get my stuff in line first before I can really be a full-time Christian. And yet this is the paradox, that in order to become a full-time Christian, you have to let Jesus come into your messy room before you clean it up. Meaning, what do you do, right? My mom would always make us clean the house before guests would come over as kids. It's like, okay, great. And we try to do this for Jesus. Be like, okay, well, I should really figure this out before I go to this church thing. Or a lot of times people avoid church altogether because they just feel unworthy. But until you understand, and some of you already know this, right? Until you understand what it means to let Jesus into a messy room that is not yet cleaned up. I used to work in college campus ministry for years, so I had lived in the dorms for a while up at our college in Latrobe. So sometimes you get a call to go visit a kid who's really struggling. You knock on the door, and they're in their room. Some kids' rooms are nice and clean, but some kids, they will never invite anyone into their dorm room because it's just not doing well. Until we can have the vulnerability and the weakness to invite Jesus into our inner rooms. And how do we do that, Father Barnabas? Well, let me be very practical, right? I could ask you right now to pull out your phone and to look at your screen time. And then as you look at your screen time on your phone, I'll say, hey, do you have time to pray every day? And before you say, no, I'm very busy, you can tell me your screen time. I'm saying this, that it's not a lack of time that keeps us from praying. It's a fear of our own worthiness, a fear of our own shame, our own messy rooms, our own conditions of our heart. And yet the only way to go directly at that is to be vulnerable enough to let him love our hearts. And so this is what you do. One, you find a place and a time to pray. Whether it's here, whether it's, I was thinking, a great place to pray and be very real is in your car. I'd encourage you to make sure it's not moving as you're praying the way I'm going to propose. Because I think in your car is a place that you can pray unfiltered. A lot of people say, am I allowed to talk to God like that, Father? Yes. Talk to him as unfiltered, as in need, as clear as you possibly can. I thought, man, I'm going to tell these people this. So on the way out here, I did talk to God like that. And I was like, God, please. And it was good because I'm not just giving you advice, I'm taking it myself. And sometimes I have seen people that things happen right there and then. But sometimes, and what I can assure you, is that when you surrender and when you ask for grace, I'll tell you this much. God, your Father, is never outdone in generosity. And you might not see it in that moment, but you can have confidence, as I am telling you now, as a priest of Jesus, that he will hear you and that he will answer you. And yet you have to be courageous enough to not buy into the lies of unworthiness and to come to him and to give him your heart before it's cleaned up, even with all its walls and its fullness and its chains. And he will bring you freedom. But then here's the last thing. When he brings you freedom, he will not just send you away like this physician that says, hey, glad to see you, good luck with your life. He will then say to you, hey, I would like for you to move in with me and also be a physician with me to help me get into the hearts of those around you. And so if you want to find a vocation and a mission that you're looking for, let the Lord heal your heart. And I tell you what, you'll be able to heal a lot of hearts along the way. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Let us now stand and profess our Catholic faith.